And welcome everybody to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K in the house with you today for a special St. John's Big East post-game show. The Red Storm starting their Big East tournament run with a resounding 78-57 win over the Butler Bulldogs. Just a strong 40-minute performance from start to finish. Did not trail the entire day. Exactly what you want. Have a number one seed. We'll break down everything from this team, and we'll look ahead to tomorrow, 6:30 on Fox, round 3, St. John's against Marquette. It'll be a fun one with a couple of great guards. We'll look at the rest of the Big East tournament that's going on later tonight, and we'll end the show with a little bit of Rutgers talk as their disappointing year finally came to a close last night against USC. We got so much coming up. It's such a fun March, especially New York State of Sports. We're live on YouTube, we're live on Twitch. So please join in on the fun, the exciting March where we talk all things St. John's, we talk all things for some great awards for RJ Lewis and Rick Pitino that were given out yesterday. Talk coming up next here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all those sports. We'll see you in just a minute. And again, thanks for joining us here on New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. Ricky K with you. And this is the first time we're trying these post-game episodes here on our new video platform. If you're familiar with the show, and we're 82 episodes in, we were doing this for recordings during the Knicks playoff run last year, the Rangers playoff run last year. So since St. John's is on in the afternoon, I happen to be home today watching the game. Figured I'd give you guys a little bit of a post-game show, but of course, I want to get you involved throughout the course of the show, so please feel free to tune in. I want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search at IE Sports Radio, and that's where you'll be able to find us. Again, each of our shows has its own specific page, so you can learn more about me at the bottom of the screen, iesportsradio.com/New York State of Sports. If you missed any portion of the show or you want to just catch up on everything St. John's again afterwards, or maybe you're listening before the Marquette game on Friday night, you can download the podcast on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, all that fun stuff. It's all there. You can follow me on X at Rickinator555. You can follow the show at NY State Sports IE. I was tweeting out during the game today, so we will have some live tweeting hopefully tomorrow night, which will be a lot of fun. Of course, again, round 3, St. John's and Marquette. And we do want to plan to do more of these special shows, and we'll try to bring them into the Supporters Club. Again, each of our shows has one for $5 a month. You can get exclusive episodes if you want a show on your favorite team. We got a lot of New York teams. Let's say you want a show on the Islanders, or a show on the Mets, or a show on NYCFC. We can make that happen, and you can even be a guest on the show. Again, Spreaker.com. You see the link at the bottom of the screen. We all appreciate the support. If you're a fan of the show, and if you are, I greatly do appreciate the support. Be sure to check that out, and we'll have some fun along the way. So we're going to hear from our sponsors just to start off with, and we'll come back and we'll recap first the very convincing win for St. John's today. Yes, I know it's Butler. Yes, I know it's a game that they should win, but we're going to get into why it's not a surprise, but it's a very strong reason why I was a little bit interested to see how they would play today. You're listening to New York State Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all those sports. We will be right back in just a few minutes.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
Rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
And our special thanks to our sponsors here at IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Planet Jerky, premium brisket beef jerky. Looking for that special snack to have during March Madness? Be sure to check that out. So I got some exciting flavors. Of course, Vital Apparel, supporting an awesome cause and mental health awareness. Great to wear while you're at the gym. A Steal the Deal wax seals. Of course, those awesome invitations, but hopefully nobody sent anything out to you during March Madness because that's where it's at. And of course, the great Larry B telling you all about IE Sports Radio. Also, check out our newest sponsor, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Go to getrawnutrition.com. Use the promo code IESR and you get 10% off of your purchase. Be sure to check that out today. So, before the intermission, and want to also shout out Taryn Rodriguez in the house. Taryn, good to hear from you. And again, if you have anything to say about the game today, you want to talk about the Marquette game tomorrow, talk about the Big East tournament, talk about March Madness, feel free to send your comments here on YouTube or on Twitch. We are on Twitch now, so they're just sending our faces everywhere, which is fantastic. I think it's going to be great for the network as well. So St. John's gets the win, 78-57 over Butler. Butler, of course, beat Providence yesterday in the 8-9 game to get to this point. And the reason I was saying before the first commercial break why I was pleasantly surprised by this is I didn't think St. John's would lose today. But I thought they would have a little bit of a blip, like a rusty start out of the gate, because you look at a couple of factors. One, Butler just played yesterday, so they're kind of more in a rhythm. St. John's had only played one game in the last week and a half. The pressure of being the 1 seed, the pressure of all the media hype around this team, and you look at the 2 meetings that St. John's had with Butler before today. Back in January, of course, St. John's only made 1 of 21 from 3. That was the famous Simeon Wilcher dunk at the end of the game that was in the Patino Red Storm Rising documentary. Came from that game. That was early January. Then a couple weeks ago, St. John's was at Hinkle Fieldhouse against Butler, and Butler gave him a tough game. Like Butler had, I think they took the lead midway through the second half. That was a game where St. John's had to win to at least clinch a share of the Big East title. They ended up doing that. But Butler has a couple of really tough guards and tough players in Telfort and Brooks. And you look at this game, and Butler was just done from the beginning of the game. And I think the big turning point came 2 minutes in when Telfort, again, one of Butler's top players, picked up 2 quick fouls. So all of a sudden, he's out of rhythm. All of a sudden, things kind of get a little bit out of whack. And St. John's goes on a 15-0 run. They take an 18-3 lead. And Butler just never recovered. And one of the keys when you read the quotes from players after the game, Aaron Scott, I think, said it especially. They didn't want to make this game in doubt at all. They knew that Butler kind of pushed them around the first couple of meetings. They wanted to change that. And to go out and play the way they did, and there's a couple of stats that stood out to me before we get to the individual performances, one being second chance points. St. John's is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. There was 14 offensive rebounds today. A lot of those came in the first half, but it led to 20 second chance points. St. John's isn't the best shooting team. We know this going in. It's not a surprise. But the fact of the matter is they went out there. They'll get on the glass. They'll make things a little bit tougher for their opponent. And I think just from that offensive rebounding standpoint and getting in great position to get those boards, that plays a factor. Because when you keep getting those and you get those second, third chance points in the first half, that takes underdog its will away. And I think St. John slowly, meticulously took Butler out of the game today. That was, I think, one of the factors that played in their favor. I thought they played a clean game overall from a defensive perspective. They only turned it over 9 times. They forced 15 turnovers and got 24 points off turnovers. That was a major factor. St. John's loves turning defense into offense, especially when they got those guards in Kadari Richmond and Davon Smith and RJ Lewis that can kind of change the game with getting steals and getting transition points. That was a major factor today. When you look at transition points in terms of getting on the fast break, St. John's had 15 fast break points. Butler had 2. And again, Telfort's out of it. Pierre Brooks didn't make a shot until a free throw at the end of the first half. They were able to stay in it, though. Patrick McCaffrey, of course, son of Fran McCaffrey, the coach at Iowa, he was hitting a couple big threes early. You had Finley Bizjack, who unfortunately got hurt in the second half for Butler. He was kind of being the spark plug, keeping him in it. And even in the second half, Butler got within 8 points and beginning of the second half, and it looked like they were maybe going to try to get something going, and St. John's quickly put a grasp on that, went on a 10-0 run, and the rest was history at that point. And really, it was a game where if you told me before the game that the Red Storm were only going to have 4 free throws, they only had 4 free throw attempts the entire game. Like Butler had 1 foul in the first 12 minutes of the second half. If you told me that Zuby Ejiofor was only going to have 4 points and took 4 shots, if you were to tell me that Aaron Scott was going to get in quick foul trouble with 2 fouls, Davon Smith comes in for Aaron Scott and he picks up 2 fouls in 30 seconds. If you were to tell me that those things would happen, I wouldn't tell you St. John's would have won by 20. I would have told you they would have won the game, but I don't think they would have won as much as they did. And I think that speaks to the depth of this team. We'll get to a couple of those guys that shown in a little bit. But let's talk about the stars first. RJ Lewis, who, of course, won Big East Player of the Year on Tuesday. First St. John's player to win the award since Walter Berry. And he played like it. I mean, he got off to a really hot start, made both of his first 2 threes. He had eight points instantly. Now, he had a little bit of offensive struggle in the first half, but it finishes the game with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 8 of 18 shooting in 31 minutes. Not a bad game. He hit some of those mid-range shots that he's known for. I love that he goes to that corner three-pointer. You see St. John's try that a lot in their offense, but I thought Lewis did a really good job, especially backing up that Player of the Year award. And if you go online to YouTube, you can check out his speech afterward. Very emotional speech, thanking his family. He's one that's also credited Rick Pitino for pushing him and kind of being on him all the time. And that's why he came to St. John's as a transfer. He wanted to play for Rick Pitino. And I think he's one of the reasons you're going to see a lot of mid-major guys want to go play for St. John's in the future. Is when Pitino can now go to those players and say, I can take you from UMass and make you a Big East Player of the Year. Like, that's the kind of thing that can really catapult a program. You could say he's not the most impactful player in the team. We'll get to, I think, the guy who is in a second. But Lewis, to me, definitely was the most consistent player from start to finish. And after last year when he got battled with the shin splints, did a really good job in handling that. Kadary Richmond, of course, remember last Saturday had the triple-double against Marquette. He was close to that today, 15 points, 8 boards, 9 assists. It was a couple of moments. Number one, we need Kadary Richmond to stop shooting three-pointers. He doesn't have a good shot. Just don't try them. Take a couple steps in, shoot inside the line, drive to the basket. That's Kadary Richmond's strength. And he's very good with the pull-up shot from the foul line. That's one of his go-tos. The second one was Rick Pitino was talking to John Fanta, who was doing the sidelines for Peacock at the half. And Fanta asked him about the offensive points that Richmond had because he was very solid all-around game. And Pitino said, we just need him to play better defense. That's the kind of thing that Pitino kind of gets on. Like, that's what people love about him, is you heard Fanta during the game. There was one point Pitino in the huddle was saying to Zuby Ejiofor, like, you're one of the best big men in the country. Start playing like it. Or there was a point they were up 16 and Butler got a couple points and he was like, I took Ruben Prey out for bad defense. I'll take you out next. I don't know who he was saying that to, but he is, when you look at Pitino coaching these games or talking to the sideline reporters, he's treating these games as like they're the NCAA tournament because he wants his players prepared for any adversity that happens, maybe in a first round game against a mid-major, or they get down in like a second round game by like 10 with 8 minutes to go. Like, he was even saying, like, they got out big. Butler came back a little bit and they're like, you guys are used to playing from behind. You have to learn to play from ahead and put your foot on the gas pedal. And the fact that they held the lead wire to wire, which is not something they do very often. Like, but that's the grit of this team. So Richmond, I thought, had a good all-around game. Aaron Scott, we mentioned, had foul trouble right out of the gate, but he was really good defensively today. He did have 15 points, 3 of 6 from 3, but that was not the story for him. He had 5 steals. 5 steals for a player who played 22 minutes. Last player that had 5 steals on St. John's in a Big East tournament game, you have to go back to Marcus Hatton in the early 2000s. That's the kind of next level defense. That's what they missed when Scott was battling some injuries over the last couple of weeks. He's got that length. He does a good job guarding at the top of the key, and he can hit that 3-point shot. I mean, considering when you look at Brady Dunlap being hurt, Jaden Glover being hurt, they need guys with consistent 3-point shooting. And Scott, I'll take 6 of 10 shooting and 3 of 6 from 3. That's the strong game for him. So I thought he did a really good job defensively. In terms of the bench, St. John's was excellent on the bench today. Their bench scoring gave him 20 points. Butler only had 7. And I look at a guy like Lefty or Lefteris Leotopoulos, the freshman from Greece. This is a player that he's getting some minutes down the stretch because you've seen Smith being hurt. RJ Lewis was hurt for a little bit. And Pitino's giving him some minutes, and he's actually doing a nice job. Like he had 3 of 5 today from the floor, 6 points. He got a big steal when Butler looked like they were coming back. They get a rebound. Lefty's right there to get the ball on a pass, turns into a layup. He's the kind of player that I want to see develop over the next year because I think as he gets more experience in the college game, I think he's going to do some good things. But if you look at this bench today, Sadiq Abina-Ayo had 5 points and 3 boards. He's a player that's done some good things. If you watch the latest Pitino Red Storm Rising documentary episode on Vice, it goes a lot into Pitino with Abina-Ayo, who, of course, was with him at Iona, kind of has kept the leadership going. He's one of the captains, even though he doesn't play that much. He means a lot to the St. John's team. So he's getting some love. I thought Iwachukwu did a good job off the bench. He had 6 points today, kind of filling in for Zuby in stretches. And remember, they only get 3 points from Davon Smith. We even mentioned after the game, he's been dealing with the shoulder stuff. He kind of has to get over the mental hurdle that shoulder injury isn't going to get much better and kind of to fight through it in a way, which isn't easy. But Smith, when he's on the floor, changes the way this team defends and changes the offense because Smith can get downhill in a hurry. He's got really good speed. We talked about Lewis winning Big East Player of the Year. Again, great moment. Rick Pitino also yesterday won Coach of the Year. And you look at the accomplishments he's done, and we've talked about it. I've got a blog post going up on our IE Sports Radio blog page on Rick Pitino. If it's not up now, it should be up in the next couple of days, about the impact he's had on this program and the job he's done. He should be National Coach of the Year in my book. I know that John Shire's a candidate, Bruce Pearl, Pat Kelsey from Louisville. There's a lot of good candidates out there. But to me, the job of taking the St. John's program to a top 6 team in the country in year 2, I don't think anybody could have imagined this. Nobody could have. And he has gotten St. John's into the Big East tournament semifinals in back-to-back years. Before last year, they hadn't made it in 25 years. You consider both the old Big East and then the new Big East, especially the new Big East, is a little bit easier because if you get that bye, all you got to do is win 1 game if you're finishing the top 5. So to get to this point and to be back at this stage, back on this Friday night game that they were a year ago, at least fortunately for them this time, they're not worried about having to win to get in. They're playing for seeding at this point. If they win out, they're probably a 2 seed in the Big East tournament. Not the Big East tournament, the NCAA tournament. They're number 1 seed in the Big East tournament. If they win out, they're a 2 seed. I think they're easily a 3. You could make the case. I think they're a 2 if they at least get to the final and play a UConn, and we'll talk about the rest of the Big East tournament a little bit later. But that's the ceiling of this team. It's now 28-4. 4 losses by 7 points. We keep echoing that, but that's how dominant this team is. It may play a different brand of basketball that people expect because it's not fancy. It's not put up 90 points. Like if you watch today, the Big 12 tournament game, BYU against Iowa State, it was like both teams in the 90s. You're not getting that when you watch St. John's. You're getting a game that's going to be a kind of a mix of transition points and a rock fight thrown into one. So give the Red Storm a lot of credit. Again, if you have any comments on today's game, you want to talk about the Big East tournament, feel free here on YouTube, on Twitch. I want to hear from you. Give me your thoughts. Tell me what you like about the show. You can also email me too throughout the Big East tournament and the NCAA tournament. rickjkeeler@gmail.com. I am happy to hear from you. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll look ahead to tomorrow. St. John's Marquette, the first Big East semifinal, round 3. What to expect, how this game might go, and what could be an instant classic considering the way both these teams have played this year. Listening to a special episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of the sports. We'll be right back after this.
Sports fans, do you like teams that are tough, cities that are tougher, and fan bases that are passionate about their teams? How about teams that are historic and stadiums that are iconic? Then you belong in Chicago, and you need to check out Chi-Town Weekly. Join me, Adam Kernan, every week as we keep up with all things Chicago sports. Bears, Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox. We'll cover them all, plus more. The Windy City is always buzzing, and we'll keep you up on all the big games and major stories. So tune in to Chi-Town Weekly every week right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Wisconsin sports fans? I'm Dan, diehard Baholic, host of the Wisconsin Whistle. Check us out every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Central, 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific. We're talking Green Bay Packers, Milwaukee Brewers, Milwaukee Bucks, Marquette basketball, Wisconsin football and basketball, and all Wisconsin sports. Don't miss us each week, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Of course, welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Rick K here with you. We just finished talking about St. John's putting up a resounding 78-57 win over Butler as they get set for tomorrow night, the Big East Tournament semifinals. We know one of them. We'll find out the other one later tonight. But it'll be round 3, St. John's against Marquette. Rick Pitino against Shaka Smart, 6:30 Eastern on Fox. It'll be Gus Johnson and Jim Jackson on the call for that one. It should be a really fun game. And these two teams have put together 2 really good games against each other this year. First one came back on February 4th. Remember, both these teams at the time were in the top 15. I was actually at this game. My first game I've gone to as a Red Storm alum. I went to games mostly as a student. In Steve Lavin's first year, I've kind of talked about, and I talk about in the blog post that'll be up, like kind of seeing this team play well kind of sparked me into, hey, I'm going to go buy a ticket and watch this game. And they won that game 70-64. And it was a real rock fight of a game, as we talked about. And St. John's was dominant on the boards. At that time, they out-rebounded Marquette 50-28 and had 21 offensive rebounds. Marquette only had 5. So that game really gives us an example of St. John's can control the paint. Something they did very well today. They had over 40 points in the paint. They were really good in that environment. They do that here, they're going to be fine. We had 13 boards from Zuby, 11 from R.J. Lewis, 11 from Canary Richmond. You put up that kind of performance, you're going to win more often than not. Cam Jones got into foul trouble in that game. We'll get into Cam Jones in a minute, but he is Marquette's best player. And then you go back to last Saturday, these teams played. It was a real back-and-forth kind of game. St. John's won 86-84 in overtime. Of course, Canary Richmond swiped the ball away from Marquette with seconds to go. Timon Wilcher passed it to Ejiofor, who hit his second buzzer beater of the season for St. John's to win in the Fiserv Forum. And again, that was a game that Rick Pitino called one of the better wins of the year because they didn't need to win that game to clinch the Big East. They'd already done that. The only thing they had to play for that in that game was seeding. So you would have understood if, like, hey, guys are banged up. We're going to maybe take a little bit, get these guys a little more rest going into the Big East tournament. They didn't do that. And they put together, I think, a really strong performance in that one. RJ Lewis, who had some major shots down the stretch, had 28 points. I thought Simon Wilcher had one of his better games of the year in that one with 13 points, 6 of 12. He played 41 minutes. In the game, they made just 5 threes. They were 5 of 23. Everybody that wasn't RJ Lewis was 2 for 16. And they still found a way to win. So when you look at this game in particular, it's going to be a matchup of the guards, particular Cam Jones. Cam Jones is, I think, a top 3 player in the Big East. If he had won Big East Player of the Year, it would not surprise me. He makes Marquette's ship go. In the 2 games that St. John's played against him this year, Jones has 47 points. 32 of those came last Saturday. But go back to that first game, Jones had 2 fouls right out of the gate. And then in the second half, when he starts to get in a rhythm, he's tough to stop. He'll hit crazy layups. He'll hit crazy 3-pointers. Things just, he makes everybody better on the floor. Instant impact guy. And it was a fun game to watch this afternoon. Marquette played Xavier. The Golden Eagles won 89-87 in a game that Marquette was down 14 in the second half. And that was a heartbreaking loss for Xavier because Xavier probably would have gotten in definitely to the NCAA tournament with a win. I think Xavier should be in. I think the Big East should get 5 teams. We know from last year that the committee didn't really respect the Big East last year. They only got 3, but it is a weak bubble. And I think despite Xavier's lack of quad 1 wins, they did beat Marquette once this year. They did beat Connecticut. And Ryan Conwell right now is just so much fun to watch. He had 30-plus points in this game. He was fantastic. So the back and forth between Jones and Conwell was really good. But Jones is going to take a lot of shots. In that overtime game last week, he had 30 shots. Marquette as a team took 71. So Jones is going to take a lot of shots. He's that kind of ball dominant point guard, but he's going to pass the ball too. If you look at the numbers today, Jones had 28 on 11 of 22, but they got a lot of people involved. Chase Ross had 16. He's a guy that can create instant offense. Stevie Mitchell, one of the better defensive players in the league, he had 16. David Joplin, who had a clutch 3 to put Marquette up 4 in the final minute, he had 14 on 3 of 7 from 3-point range. And they got out-rebounded by Xavier. Xavier did really good on the glass, 36-27. Xavier was the better rebounding team. If Marquette only has 27 rebounds tomorrow, they're not winning the game. Like, they're going to have to do a little bit better on the glass. But Marquette hit their free throws when it mattered. They were able to pick up some fast break points, and they only turned it over 4 times. Like, Marquette played a very clean game on the offensive side, and they took advantage of mistakes. Xavier only had 10 turnovers. But when they did turn over, Marquette had 18 points off those turnovers. So Xavier's 2. That goes a long way. So when you look at Shaka Smart's team, they got guys that can create offense. Parham had 10 points off the bench, but really didn't get anything from their bench today. We've seen Lowry do a little bit, but Ben Gold only had 3 points as one of their top big men. But I think this is a game where St. John's can control the boards, but this is where Zuby Ejiofor is going to have a huge game. If Ejiofor gets on the glass, they should win. But expect a rock fight. I mean, this is a game where both these teams know each other extremely well. I mean, right now the line on that, as I got ESPN bet open here, the line is 4.5. Not shocked. I was talking to my brother before going on here, and I said the spread probably tomorrow is around 4. You take the averages of the 2 games, about 4. So if you go back to that February game, there was the defensive stand where Richmond gets the block with about 80 seconds left that kind of defines what this team is. If you're ever looking just for showing a great team defense, that's the one you take a look at. That's what St. John's can do. And one of the things I've mentioned throughout the year is Rick Pitino has said he shows his team the Oklahoma City Thunder defense. And that's kind of what they model their team defense up. So this should be a really fun game. Again, I think St. John's is going to win. I think they're going to get to the Big East final. Would it shock me if Marquette won this game? No. It is very tough to beat a team 3 times in anything. Like we talk about with the NFL playoffs sometimes. It's very tough to beat a team 3 times in a row. But I think you look at St. John's right now, they're just on that run. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy to win the Big East tournament. It's not. But it's going to be a much different environment. Marquette had a home kind of crowd for that Xavier game this afternoon for 2:30 tip. And yeah, St. John's had a good showing today, but they'll commented there wasn't a lot of people in the stands. Well, it's a noon game during the week. A noon game during the week is a lot different than 6:30 tomorrow night. 6:30 tomorrow night, Friday night in the city, St. Patrick's Day weekend. It's going to be red. The St. John's going to drown out. It's not a home game for St. John's, like in terms of the ticket distribution, but you're going to get a lot of Red Storm people in that building. And I think it's going to drown out the Marquette noise that comes. Marquette does travel. Dwayne Wade was on the sideline today. Well, courtside for the game today. And you can tell those Marquette players knew Dwayne Wade was in the building the way they were playing. Again, I think St. John's wins, but you have to respect what Marquette has done. You have to respect this team, though, does have some inconsistencies. I mean, if you look at Marquette's resume, today's win against Xavier was the first time they had really beaten a quality opponent since January. You have to go back to the Villanova game in late January as the last time they'd really beaten a team of substance in the league. Remember, they lost to UConn twice. They lost to Villanova. They lost to Creighton in a year where they did split with Creighton, but their win against Creighton came in early January. So Marquette's got talent, but if you're looking at them on their bracket, when you get that bracket on Sunday night, when you evaluate Marquette's team, they're going to go as Cam Jones goes. If Cam Jones has a rough night shooting, gets in foul trouble, they're a mess. That's going to be the key. If you're St. John's defense, you let Cam Jones get his 30, and you just shut down everybody else. That's got to be the focus, and I'm interested to see, is it RJ on him a lot? Is it Aaron Scott on him a lot? We're going to find out how Patino plays this, but he's one of the better coaches ever at preparing for these kind of tournament atmospheres and that turnaround. He's going to have this team prepared, and I think they'll be ready to play going into tomorrow. We'll take one more timeout. We'll come back. We'll look at the Big East tournament as a whole right now. We'll preview tonight's games at MSG. Should be, I think, a really good one, especially in the very late window. And we'll talk Rutgers a little bit and their season coming to an end. And really, Steve Peichel probably should be on the hot seat. We'll dive into that coming up next here on New York State Sports 90 Sports Radio, your direct feed for all this sports. We'll be right back in, about a minute or so.
Are you a Tar Heel, Blue Devil, Demon Deacon, or maybe even a Gamecock? Do you cheer for the Panthers, the Canes, the Crown? And check out the Carolina Sports Update every week with me, Neil Curtis, to get the latest and greatest on all the sports action in the Carolinas. We'll be talking pro sports, ACC and SEC football, basketball, baseball, and everything in between. We'll even talk a little Formula One racing now and again. So, for the best hour on Carolina sports coverage, catch me each week on Carolina Sports Update with Neil Curtis, right here on ID Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Davidson.
It's your boy, the Tarius Lava.
And we are the hosts of Fast Break here on IE Sports Radio, where we discuss everything in the world of basketball from prep to the pros.
You guys should definitely check us out, man. Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We got all the basketball information you guys need, so we look forward to you guys listening in.
And please do, because we are the best basketball show on this side of the Mississippi. And please do check us out on Twitter at FastBreakISR. D-Lock, Where's our time again?
8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That gives you guys plenty of time on a Sunday.
Tune in.
Welcome back to New York State of Sports and Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. Be sure to check out Fast Break this Sunday night, especially after the bracket comes out. There's going to be a lot of NCAA tournament talk on the men's and women's side. Should be really fun next couple of weeks in college basketball. We've had a lot of great games today across all these conference tournaments, as most of them in full, all of them in full swing, but we're getting to where like you're going to see a lot of the elite teams play this week in the major conferences. Some major results today. Cooper Flagg gets hurt for Duke, but they hang on to play Georgia Tech, and they'll play North Carolina tomorrow night. UNC picked up a win over Wake, and it's a big bubble result for them. Arkansas took a tough loss to Ole Miss. We'll see if John Calipari gets an NCAA tournament, but free throws dooming John Calipari's team once again. There's no surprise there. And we already talked about the crazy high-scoring game between Iowa State and BYU. Out in the Big Ten in Indy, Oregon beat Indiana, so we'll see if the Hoosiers feel safe on the bubble, as they'll have to sweat it out until Selection Sunday. But let's talk the rest of the Big East tournament. And so far, I think the story has been DePaul. And shout out to Adam Karnick and Chi-Town Weekly, who is going to have to talk more DePaul in the future. Chris Holtmann, former the coach of Ohio State, took over this DePaul job this year. They had 0 Big East wins last year. They now have 5 this year, and 3 of them coming against Georgetown. They swept them. Last night, they beat the Hoyas 71-67. NJ Benson came back from injury, had 18 points. And you just love DePaul. Remember, DePaul's been in this league a long time, since the old Big East, about 2 decades worth. And I don't think they've really had much success at all. But their program, I think that's going to start to get better, especially as Holtmann gets more consistency with the players, starts to get Chicago as more of a destination. That was a really good win last night, and good on DePaul. I mean, you hate to see these teams, like, especially it helps the Big East if the teams at the bottom start to get better. So I give DePaul a lot of credit. Great win. It's going to be very tough for them tonight. They're taking on Creighton. Creighton's favored by 12.5 right now. And, of course, when you watch Creighton, Ryan Kalkbrenner's story, one of the better defenders in the country. Stephen Ashworth makes the ship go at the point guard position. That's really the go-to duo for the Blue Jays. Greg McDermott usually finds a way to have a successful Creighton program. They were 22-9 this year. You look at the times they played DePaul this season. DePaul actually pushed them a little bit back in February. The Blue Demons were only down 4 at the half. They ended up losing the game by 10. And then back in January, Creighton won at DePaul 73-49. But Blue Demons gave them a test about a month ago. And I think you look at this team, they're going to have to shoot the ball well from 3. That's got to be a focal point tonight if they want any shot in this game. DePaul last night was 9 of 24 from 3. I think they're going to have to hit at least double-digit threes to stay in this game. But hopefully they get a good show at 7 o'clock. That's going to be a fun one. And then the 9:30 game, or shortly after 9:30, is Villanova at Connecticut. Villanova, they're like on the periphery of the bubble. I don't think they're really on the bubble. I think they have to get to the final just to even have a chance. So this win would go a long way. But this win tonight, even if they don't make it into the tournament, I think Kyle Neptune, the Villanova coach, needs this win. Because last night, he was just trying to avoid major disaster, and they did. Seton Hall has just been a mess this year. The Pirates only had 17 points in the first half. Villanova won 67-55. We'll get to Seton Hall in a minute, what that could mean for next year. But you look at Nova against Connecticut tonight. UConn's favored by 6.5. Liam McNeely, the freshman of the year in the Big East, But you look at the two matchups they've had this year. You go back to February, Villanova was at Gamble Pavilion and had the lead late, and UConn rallied to win 66-59. And then earlier this year, back in January, Villanova won by 2 in a game where UConn missed free throws at the end of the game. But both these games that they've played have been back and forth wars. I would expect that tonight. That's where you're going to have to see if Eric Dixon can kind of pick up the slack scoring. And the key for UConn is going to be Alex Caravan. Like, if UConn's going to go on that run and have a chance, I don't think they're going to three-peat. But if they're going to go on a deep run and make a Sweet 16 or an Elite 8, they're going to need Caravan to score to help McNeely. Solo Ball, of course, is one of the better guards in the Big East. He's a player, of course, you're going to want to watch tonight. And the coaching matchup, Dan Hurley always provides some entertainment. UConn always packs the building at the Garden. I think they're going to put up a good performance tonight. So if results hold to form, you're going to get probably what should be. You can make the case Xavier's been the 4th best team in the Big East over the last 2 months. But if the results hold, you're going to get the top 4 teams in the Big East all year, which is St. John's, Marquette, Creighton, and Connecticut in no particular order. And if Creighton plays UConn in the semis, remember those 2 teams split with each winning at the other team's gym. So that would be a fun game tomorrow night at 9 if we do get that. But I'm really, out of the 2, if you're going to watch one of these games, especially as you're flipping around on FS1, if you're flipping to ESPN or flipping to ESPN2 or whatever Big Ten Network, whatever you're watching tonight for college basketball, Villanova UConn is the one game I'd watch in the Big East because that's the game I think that means the most and probably the most entertaining out of the 2. And then very quickly, first let's actually talk Seton Hall. Again, their season coming to a close. They finished 7-25. Isaiah Coleman was their best player. He said after the game last night that he's going to think about things for deciding if he wants to transfer or not. He's only a sophomore. He would be, if he gets in the transfer portal, I think one of the better players in the portal. No, I don't think Rick Pitino will try to recruit Isaiah Coleman, but you never know. They did take Kadari Richmond last year. And I think if Seton Hall can keep this group together and Shaheen Holloway gets them NIL money, they're going to turn it around. Remember, Seton Hall doesn't have a lot of resources. Holloway's good with turning something out of nothing. We saw that with the miracle run at St. Peter's. We saw that last year when Seton Hall won the NIT. And I think should have been an NCAA tournament team last year. Like, the drop-off they've had from last year to this year is stunning. It was predictable they would regress, but not to the point where they win 7 games. That just doesn't happen at the time. So hopefully things get better for the Pirates. I thought they were going to put up a much more of a fight last night because they had hung with Villanova the week before. Didn't think they would win, but I didn't think they'd be down 18 at the half. And that was kind of surprising in itself. The Pirates were 5 of 15 from 3. They shot 43%, only made 4 out of 9 free throws. But the foul discrepancy in this one, Villanova had 30 free throws. Seton Hall had 9. Very interesting discrepancy when you look at that. And then we'll go quickly to Rutgers. Just a disastrous season. I mentioned before the last commercial break, I think Steve Pikiell's got to be on the hot seat because you can't have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. I know Harper battled some injuries this year. I know you listened to Nicole Auerbach on the game last night, and she said that talked to Pikiell, and Pikiell said maybe they should have scheduled better in the non-conference with a young team. You finished under 500. You didn't do much in the transfer portal to help Bailey and Harper. And you flame out in the Big Ten tournament, losing to USC 97-89 in double overtime. And there were some great moments this year. Both those freshmen put on great performances. Harper last night had 27 points. Bailey had 17, but they combined to go 2 for 11 from 3. Rutgers as a team was 6 of 30 from beyond the arc. And USC, in a game that had 2 overtimes, shot 52%. That can't happen. This is a team, by the way, Rutgers had just played USC back on February 23rd. Rutgers won 95-85. And they could not find a way to beat the Trojans in this one. USC is going to play Purdue later tonight. But I know Steve Pikiell's got a good recruiting class coming in. Not the elite one, but Bailey and Harper at least got them, I think, some pretty solid players. And I know it's really tough in the Big Ten. They're going to have to do much better next year. or Steve Pikiell's going to hear it. Because if this was New York City and he had a bad performance like that, he wouldn't hear the end of it. But it's one of the more disappointing stories in college basketball to have two great freshmen that I think would have been fantastic on the March Madness stage to watch those two get a shot. Rutgers has made NCAA tournaments in the past with Pikiell with teams that weren't as talented as with those two guys. And they don't even finish over 500. Very disappointing. But it's been that kind of year. And you thought maybe Rutgers, if they won last night, they would have got another shot at Purdue. I know Purdue embarrassed them the last time, but you never know in these kind of conference tournaments where teams can make crazy runs. Heck, we saw in the Big 12, Colorado, who was 16th in the Big 12 this year, won 2 games. And even today, they played Houston. They only lost by 9. So, I mean, they held their own in this conference tournament. So not surprised by that. Really quickly, we'll give you some other games to watch tonight. Right now, great one on the SEC Network if you're going to tune in for that. Texas A&M. The only other local team in action right now is Fordham. They're down 43-35 at the half to George Washington. Fordham had a really good offensive performance yesterday against Rhode Island. They won 88-71. And then the Metro Atlantic has a couple quarterfinals tonight. Manhattan taking on Iona. That's always a good local rivalry. That's at 6 Eastern on ESPN+. Iona favored by 2.5. And then at 8:30, Mount St. Mary's takes on Marist. The Red Foxes, I think, have been one of those surprise teams. At 20-9, they could really make a run in this conference tournament. The two winners of tonight's games await Quinnipiac, who, of course, is the regular season champion. That's tomorrow night at 6 o'clock on ESPN News. The other winner will wait Merrimack at 8:30. Merrimack, of course, first year in the Metro Atlantic and got to the NEC final last year before losing to Wagner. These post-game shows, you do, and I hear from you. Maybe we'll do one tomorrow after the Big East semifinal against 6:30 Eastern. St. John's against Marquette. Should be a good rock fight. Round 3, Rick Pitino, Shaka Smart, Cam Jones, Kadari Richmond, RJ Lewis, Subi Ejiofor. It's great to see that those guys seem to find a way to get things done. And I think when you look at this match, it's going to be so much fun. But a great performance today by St. John's Red Storm against 78-57. The final against Butler. I'll hold up on the screen for you one more time. Just consistent 40 minutes start to finish. Never trailed the entire game. Got out to an 18-3 lead. Butler got as close as 8 points, but just a solid all-around game. Rick Pitino said it wasn't a great game, but they played well. And for a team that had only played one game in a week and a half, I think you'll take playing well and just going from there. There should be a fun action in the Big East tournament tonight. I think Villanova UConn again is going to be a fun game, but St. John's now 28-4 on the year. If they win the Big East tournament, they get to 30, trying to capture another Big East championship. If Rick Pitino keeps doing crazy things at St. John's this year, it would be great to cap off the week and get into the NCAA tournament with a regular season title, maybe a 2 seed. We'll see. But thanks to all those who tuned in. We got a great shows coming up for you tonight on the network. Philly Sports Talk, World War Breakdown. If you're into Philly sports and Minnesota sports. Minnesota sports today just they fired their college basketball coach. See what Gwen's thoughts are on that. And so much more. Thanks to all for tuning in today. For Larry B and all of us at iSports Radio, I'm Ricky K saying have a great rest of your night. And see you back here tomorrow to recap the Big East semifinal. Until then, so long, everybody.